Hello, I'm the X-Cat, and welcome back to episode 296 of my Minecraft Xbox Update Adventures Let's Play. This is a Let's Play where I've been playing through the various updates that have come out for Minecraft on the consoles, building stuff, killing stuff, and of course, destroying stuff, like I've been doing with this river recently. So, why am I destroying this river? Honestly, just to kind of see what a destroyed river looks like in Minecraft. It's one of those big projects I've always wanted to do, but like, never have, because getting sponges is hard in most survival worlds. But I figured, you know, I have this Let's Play world where I do have sponges. Let's try and drain an entire river, because it is a bizarrely entertaining, at least in my head. Like, I guess it's a bizarrely, like, you know, like, fulfilling project, and I wanted to give this a try, which is exactly what I'm doing right now. So, yeah, basically, if you're curious as to how one drains a river, you might think, oh, so that's going to involve a lot of steps. Honestly, all you've got to do is get, like, fairly small segments of a river that looks something like this. I think going diagonal is a bad idea, but we'll see how that goes. And then we just use our sponges, which we've dried a bunch of. We place basically a single one, and then, oh, everything goes all at once. Boom. Now we get the sand back. We can place, put the sponge in the furnace, place another one just over here, and then suddenly, oh, look at that, this was all done as well. And then so on and so forth, we should eventually end up with a drained river. And I'm thinking, last episode, all we got done was this segment right here, and it looks really interesting, but I'm hoping this episode, you know, like, because of how you learn stuff better as you go along, I'm hoping this episode, instead of just this one little straight here, we can get the entire rest of the river done, all the way up to where the desert goes, because one of the things I realized about the desert is the drained river actually allows me to connect the two halves of the desert in a way that makes me able to, you know, get rid of the desert in a little bit of a better way. So that's going to be kind of fun too. I want to see how this blends into that, and again, it's going to be quite interesting, and that's what we'll be doing in today's video. And yeah, while we talk about why we do that sort of weird stuff that probably confuses some of you and makes you go, so yeah, why do you do the things you do? I figure why not talk about, again, what I've been up to this past week. It hasn't been any brand new countries, I don't think. But I have been to the Russian embassy. I've been to London several times actually. As I'm recording this, I'm about to go to London for a third time this single week because I'm going there with friends. But I had to go like twice this week because basically I had to fill in again Russian visa, blah 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 blah, lots of steps. Some countries really hard to get into. I know this sounds bizarre. I know some of you are thinking like, so Cat, yeah, of course you need a visa. That's how you get into countries. But honestly, if you're from being from the EU and traveling mostly to the EU, it really is easy to go to any other country. You just show up there, you show them your passport, they say, oh, yes, we allow British people into the country, and then they let you in. It's all wonderful. But like getting into Russia, they're like, oh yeah, you are British, therefore you are suspicious. Please go through all these various steps. And I just found that to be quite an interesting little thing. But yeah, so Russian visa was what I was up to this past week for a little bit. It's a surprisingly tricky task. It costs a ridiculous amount of money. Like I just pro tip right here. You know, life pro tip for everyone right now. If you want to go to a country, look up countries you can go to without having to like apply for a visa or anything, because it would just be cheaper. Like, even though Russia is like absurdly cheap to go to, you know, like, because the ruble isn't a very valued currency right now, so everything's kind of cheap in Russia, but the cost of getting there is just like absurdly high in comparison. And just, you know, pro tip, don't do it. But since we're talking about it anyway, a fun fact I learned about the Soviet Union recently, you know, again, the former state of Russia, is that when the Soviet Union was the Soviet Union, no other planes could pass over their territory, except if they were, you know, like Soviet planes. Which is, honestly, like, when you think about the modern world, think about how many countries you have to fly over to go from one faraway place to another. Like, if you fly from, what, China to, like, the UK directly, imagine, you know, think about how many countries you're flying over, like, at minimum, like, 5 or 6, right? And then imagine the largest country on Earth doesn't let anyone fly over it. I just thought that was kind of cool. And there you go. There's a fun fact you can have before we talk about the experience of the Russian embassy. Although it's actually a visa center, like, separate to the embassy, as I later learned. Because when I first got there, they're like, oh yes, so, you know, we even though we're open till 5:30, we actually stopped letting people in after 3. And it's like, oh, it's 3:28, and we've come all this way from London. And it's like, I guess you'll just have to come tomorrow. And 1, that's super, super weird. And then 2, they're like, oh yeah, and we're also closed on these days. And they celebrate all the UK holidays and all the Russian holidays. And it's like, oh yeah, so May the 8th, I think it is. So today, it's actually Victory in Europe Day. Fun fact, you know, let's talk about that. That's current events, isn't it? So, happy Victory in Europe Day, everyone. That's from World War II, if you're not familiar, over the whole day, because Europe was won on May the 8th. But they celebrate it on May the 9th in Russia because it happened really close to midnight, and Russia's like a few hours ahead. So that means that they celebrate both days off, like Victory in Europe Day, and then Victory in Europe Day, brackets, Soviet Union. So, oh, I guess, you know, Russia in general. So, yeah, I just thought that was a little bit interesting. Fun little fact we could share before I talk about what I've been, I guess, thinking about a lot this week, which is choice paralysis. Because choice paralysis is something I go through, like, all the time, and I feel like most people do, but they don't necessarily realize they're doing it. And it's something I guess I've learned some lessons about them maybe I could share, and that maybe would be valuable to someone besides me. So there we go, that's what we're doing. If you don't know choice paralysis, it's basically, when you're presented with, like a bunch of choices, like let's say 50, and you want to find the best one, you just spend so much time trying to make a decision that you almost certainly never will. So let's say you're in a candy store. In fact, this is my favorite example because this is the first time I realized this was a thing. Because when I was like, let's make up an age, like 6 or 5 or something, like some young age, I would walk to the corner store with my grandmother, and in exchange for walking with her, she'd give me like 30p or like a 20p coin, or some tiny amount of money, but it was a lot in 15 years ago or whatever. It felt like a lot because I was a kid, and any amount of money feels good, big to a kid, right? But yeah, she gave me like 10p and be like, you can buy anything you want in the shop, and they had this giant sweet section with maybe like 50 boxes of sweets. That's not a really common thing in the UK, right? Like where you can just buy like penny sweets or 5p sweets, but it was a thing that existed back then, at the very least. And basically, she was just like, yeah, you can buy whatever you want. And I'd always, at the first, it'd be like, oh yeah, I'll buy myself a Curly Whirly, or I'll buy myself some cola bottles. They're the best. But like, as time went on, I'd realized that every single time I was going there, like every single thing I was buying was me not buying something else. And this is actually, this is a concept that comes up in business. It's called the opportunity cost. Like, if you have 30p, you're not just buying a Kinder Bueno, you're also not buying, like, every other single item in the shop. That's the opportunity cost of that money, which is kind of nuts, actually. The fact that, like, that's a real little business thing that, like, like little toy cat was thinking of just because he wanted all the sweets. And yeah, this is a real thing that you'll face all the time in life because, there's a lot of choices you have to make all the time. And if you're presented with too many and you want to make the right one, most people just don't make any decision at all. They're just like, there's so many options. Like, let's say you want to fly from London to New York, right? And I think there's like 6 airlines that do that exact route from that exact airport, Heathrow. So you're like, okay, it's the same airport to the same airport, and we're just picking the airline. If they all cost roughly the same, trying to pick which airline was the best is the sort of thing where if you want to do this perfectly and you want to make sure you get the perfect decision, you're going to spend so long doing it that you're not going to end up going anywhere. You're going to be like, oh, okay, I'll spend a few more days thinking about this, and then you just won't. And yeah, it's fascinating to me that like too much choice is a bad thing, because personally, I actually really like making choices. I think having the choice is an infinitely better thing to have in your life. Like if you, one sec. Like I feel like that is how you know you're doing well, when you can pick what you're gonna do when you're gonna do it. If someone allows you to do those things, then that's wonderful, isn't it? I think we can all agree on that. But yeah, so basically, choice is a good thing. But I think there's like a certain number of choices that is good, and a certain number that is like bad. Also, monsters nearby. Where are these monsters of which the game speaks? Is them? Wait. Okay, we'll put this away. We'll grab our our iron out there. Put our wet sponges in. And then we'll hope that whatever monster was there is gone. Although maybe that's like a glitch in the message. No, it doesn't seem to be. Okay, so we've got 2 options. We can either just keep going through the night, which I don't really want to do, or we can find this monster. I think it's a glitch. I don't think there is a monster. Like, unless there's like a cave below my house or something, there's no way a monster would get here. So instead, I guess we'll go to the desert temple. And I can show you the destroyed desert. So, it might be a little bit of a break on the plans to, get everything done. But that's fine. We'll keep going. And everything will be just wonderful by the end. But yeah, I think the right number of choices to make. So if you want to let someone else decide, but you still want to have like the power of like, yeah, I'm, you still feel like you're in control. I think like letting them pick 3 options for you, that is the best way, right? That's, I think, so this is something that always fascinates me, like what millionaires or like billionaires that like don't actually have any idea what they're doing do with their money, because it, one, if you want to make money, I feel like catering to billionaires is probably a good way to do it, right? Like if you have a business idea and you're like, oh yeah, well I need to sell 1,000 yams a day to make enough money to keep feeding the yams, or I don't know what I'm talking about here, but let's say you wanted to sell yams. I don't know what yams are, but you want to sell them, let's say. Then if you want to sell yams to normal people, you need to sell like hundreds to make a profit. But if you want to sell yams to millionaires, you could just sell 1 yam for 1 million and you could be set for life. How could you sell a yam for 1 million? Don't ask me. It's probably a better question with like services and stuff. But my point being is like seeing how like super crazy rich people spend their money is something that's always fascinating because of this whole like choice thing, that you don't want to ever give someone too many choices. You want to just give them like a few and be like, oh yeah, so do you want to go to the beach or do you want to go to the party? You don't say, do you want to go to the beach? Do you want to go to the party? Do you want to go to Universal Orlando? Do you want, or not Orlando, whatever the place is called in I guess it'd just be Universal Hollywood or whatever. But point being, like, if you give someone too many options, it's like generally bad for the brain, and that's something that's always fascinated me. The fact that there's like a right number of decisions you can give someone to make it perfect, or you can just say, yeah, you do whatever, and that's the best way to do it. So it's interesting that I kind of worked that one out, and I think it's also maybe a valuable lesson. But I've also figured that I think it changes for some people. I think maybe there are some people who love the thing that gives some people choice paralysis. So, yeah, maybe that's a thing, maybe it's not. But there you go. There's a life lesson on choice paralysis. If you want to make money, sell things to millionaires, and give them, like, give them few good options, rather than lots of, like, just different options. Because that's how you make your money. You have your yam farm, or, you know, let's assume you're not selling yams. Let's say it's like a travel company. I don't know. I'm just saying, there's an idea for you. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope one of you becomes a millionaire now. So with that said now out of the way, another thing that's like, I guess, along the same lines, that sounds a little bit crazy, that like, you know, I began to... Do you hear that? What is that noise? Do you hear, like... Did anyone else say that? Was that just like... Okay, you know what, that was just random noises. It sounded a little bit like an iron golem, but like doing something really nutty. But whatever, it's gone now. Problem solved. I've actually seen a lot of the iron golems drown in this river lately, and I'm a little bit concerned by that, but I guess... Yeah, I guess it must have just happened in one of these sections, without me realizing. Well, on the one hand, that's sand. On the other hand, it was probably going to happen regardless, right? So, it's probably fine. It's probably, almost certainly, just okay that happened. So, yeah, with that said, yeah, another thing I've been thinking about a lot recently is, like, this is, like, an easy, like, it's actually a fairly common, like, in fact, it's an almost unprovable piece of thing that, like, if you get stuck on, like, you'll go into some real issues. Because it's impossible to prove that everyone else isn't the same person, or that everyone else isn't a robot, or something like that. Because you can never understand someone else's, like, thinking process, right? You can only, like, hope to understand it, or, like, you know, like, roughly understand the outputs of it. And that's... I've always struggled a tiny bit with that, because to some extent that means that, like, you always have to... Like, the odds of you being in a Matrix where, like, oh, yeah, you know, when you die, you're going to reveal that you get a high score. Like the life simulator game in Rick and Morty, right? Like, oh yeah, this was all just a game you were playing in some higher conscious or something. And that's always like a little bit of a scary idea. But I've always thought, like, you know what? The easiest solution to this is just to believe that if you're ever worried that, like, oh yeah, well, everything's a simulation, so why does anything matter? But I've always figured, like, you know what? Even if it's not a simulation, you can probably make that argument anyway, and therefore you might as well just argue, well, let's just do the things with the best outcomes for the future, which is actually, I feel like that's the easiest, like, single piece of life advice in the world, like, right? Like, even if you don't necessarily think you care about anything right now, which is a surprisingly common state to be in, like, I think, you know, like, that's how, like, a lot of depression stuff goes, right? I think the easiest way past that idea, at least, you know, not just in general the whole thing, but, like, the easiest way past the idea of, like, oh yeah, well, why do anything ever, right? Is, I mean, okay, this is gonna be tricky because it's a little bit too wide to go on one, so I guess we'll cut across it. But the kind of the easy answer to that kind of like state of like, well, why do anything is like, well, I mean, that's always the answer. Like, there's never any good reasons to do anything. But if you want to just have like a good situation in future where you feel less like that, then do the more fun thing. And that's again, this is actually like a lesson I think I taught myself, like maybe. I was gonna say like the 70s, but I mean like in my teenagers, which apparently is in the 70s in my head. But like, you know, like some number of years back, is like just do the most fun outcome that will lead to more fun situations with more fun decisions to make. And surprisingly, that led to very good situations all around. And I think maybe that's just good life advice then. So there you go. There's your official life advice with Toy Cat. Too many choices is a bad thing, and everyone else is the same person. So you might as well just have fun with them. And maybe that is useful. Maybe it's not. But you have fun regardless. Because honestly, it's really weird to me that like there is this big disconnect between what people want now and what you're going to want in the future, right? Like, I feel like everyone, modern day humans, you know, we don't just get to do what we, I guess, primarily, whatever the word would be, want to do. Like, you don't just do the first thing that pops into your head. Because if you do that, you'll sit in bed all day reading Twitter and laughing at you, well, not laughing at YouTube, but sitting in bed reading Twitter and eating Doritos all day. That's what you do all day, every day. And we can all agree that's bad in the long run, right? So we don't do it, even though we know it would be great in the short run. Or even like, okay, any time you do exercise, you know you're sacrificing a lot of current pain, but you're gonna benefit from it every single moment in the future. Every time you deny yourself the bag of Doritos, it's the same sort of thing, right? There's a lot of like current sacrifice for future you. That is, and I think that's something that like defines like future people. I think that's something that we'll see more and more, in fact, as time goes on. Of like, oh yeah, well right now, at least at present, you know, like again, there's some amount of times where you can just be like, yep, I'm just gonna lay down and do nothing. But I think that's like the evolution of humans as a species, right? The fact that we can sacrifice right now to go in the future, because I guarantee you, there are no tigers that are thinking like, you know what, I would really enjoy going hunting for gazelles right now, but I think that's probably gonna be bad for my, you know, my upset stomach. So you know what I'm gonna do instead? I'm gonna lay here for a bit. I'm gonna wait it out, and I'm gonna, you know, watch the latest special on Netflix or whatever. No, that's not a decision they make. Mostly because they don't have Netflix. But my point of all of that ridiculous train of thought is that I think there is this interesting divide between what you want to do and what you should do, and I think that's how you be a more successful modern human, by being able to do that divide better. Like, if you think about all successful business people, or like all successful like company people, right? Again, I'm not a successful company person. Let me clarify. I happen to know like there is some in my family, I think, or one in my family, and I feel like the easiest way to describe someone who's good at their job and like, you know, able to progress is someone who's able to like swallow the instinct of like, tell your boss he's an idiot. Tell your boss he's an idiot. He's a total idiot. What is he doing? You gotta swallow the instinct, and you've got to be like, oh yeah, really good idea. You know what, boss? We should replace every single doorbell in the world with a smartphone. That's what the world needs. Although actually I have a smart doorbell, so maybe I shouldn't mock that. But my point being is, I feel like it's kind of, it's a strange thing, but I feel like the way, I say I feel like a lot now, don't I? I'll try and stop that right now. But one of the things I find to be intriguing about the whole thing is like, I feel like, oh no, okay, I went a full 6 seconds without saying I feel like. I tried my hardest, I really did. But that's like the thing that can, like, that's how you can, I guess, describe any level of success in life. As like, oh yeah, how hard are you fighting against your instincts? Because if you're just going with the instinctive path, then everyone can do it. And that's why I think, okay, so that's why I think like going into education matters. It just shows that you are willing to go to a place to do a thing that sucked for a really long time. And that's what sometimes employers want to hear. Like, wow, you were so dedicated to doing this, you've been doing that for 2 years. Because honestly, this is something okay. This is like, this sounds like some crazy stoner thought you hear from like dude who's like, yeah, school just wants to absorb your brain, man. But honestly, this is a lesson I learned way too late in life. Maybe if you're in the system, you can learn it now and it'll save you some effort. But school isn't there to like measure your intelligence. For some reason, we all want to believe that school is there to measure intelligence, right? Or university or college or any word for an education institute. But in reality, all they're really there to do is to weed out people who can do the thing, you know, the thing that's terrible and they don't want to do for a while, from the people that can't. Like, that's basically the entire purpose of the schooling system. Because, you know, if you have a qualification, okay, at least in the UK, you can retake exams as many times as you like, I think. There are sometimes exceptions. Certain subjects do have exceptions, but you can just keep on taking it over and over again until you get the best answer you want. And there's also a lot of coursework-based stuff where, oh yeah, same thing. You can just keep retaking and retaking until, or you know, retrying and resubmitting until you get it perfect. Like there is technically no excuse, no matter how bad you are at, let's say, science, for not getting an A star or an A plus or whatever grade you want to get in a coursework thing, because you can just keep redoing it. However, you know, not everyone does get the A star, A plus or whatever in business or whatever subject you're doing, because it's only there, you know, to weed out the people who are willing, who want it that bad that they'll go through it. And I think, again, I said I think instead of I feel like. Yeah, go me! Breaking linguistic barriers or something like that. But yeah, I think the real kind of... Also, training takes a lot longer than you figure. You figure like, oh yeah, we've been doing this for 18 minutes, we've got so much done, but we've only really moved the barrier from like there to here, and it's a surprisingly tricky task. So I guess I've learned my lesson on making big promises. But yeah, the thing is that when it comes to like, you're only really there to like kind of show off that yes, I'm willing to go through this much effort, I want it that badly. And I think a lot of things in life are kind of set up that way, where like everyone assumes there's these ridiculous goals between you and the thing. But, you know, and this sounds like a weird motivational speech, but I think in reality there's a lot of artificial barriers to prevent people who can, you know, the people who are best qualified to do it but don't really want to do it, from people who like kind of want to do it and are really dedicated to doing so. And that's why I think you see a lot of stuff where no matter how good or bad you are at a thing, as long as you're dedicated to it, you can get places. And maybe this is too deep for a Let's Play, especially, you know, which play Minecraft, talking about the complexities of the school system or whatever. But it's something that, again, I wish I'd realized earlier. Because then you know, again, when you're in school, you're like, I'm too cool for school. This is useless. I'm not going to do it. But I wish I'd realized, like, oh yeah, this is just, I'm just trying to send some message to some employer that, yes, I am great. And, you know, that's why, like, the interview matters so much, because you get to show, like, oh, not only, you know, did I happen to get this grade like this, but also, I'm kind of good at, you know, I'm also an interesting person. Or, like, oh, look, as you can see, I can make witty jokes, and I'll be funny in the break room or whatever. And that's, I guess, the you know, that's the second point of it. But yeah, something a lot of people don't realize. There's your life lesson that I wish I'd realized, and now you have it too. So one more thing before we go. Today's episode is something I was realizing recently is that this is something everyone does. I hope. If you don't, then please send me to a, you know, a psychiatric ward or whatever, a place, a home, whatever you want to call it, a place where people who do irrational things do. But point being is like, conversations in your head is something I think most people do, right? I'm pretty sure. I mean, most people don't talk about it, but, like, you know, preparing a conversation in your head, so, like, or having a pretend conversation in your head between you and either person you like, or just someone you're interested in talking to. Like, oh yeah, that's what I do then. Or, like, even sometimes, like, retaking a conversation, like, oh yeah, I did a really bad job at this. I'm gonna give this a retry. I'm gonna have this argument again, and I'm gonna win it this time, but, like, in your head, in the shower. I think that's, oh, no. Okay, we're good. I think that's a surprisingly common thing, right? I could be wrong. Again, I hope I'm not crazy, but I might be. If you do this too, maybe you're crazy as well. Maybe we're both crazy together. But point being is, you know, this is a thing people do. They have conversations in their head, and if you try and describe that to anyone, it sounds so crazy. I think we should, you know, it sounds like the sort of thing where you should be like, oh yeah, that doesn't sound right. Like, oh yeah, so I talk in my head and I pretend. There is definitely a zombie below here somewhere. I don't know. I didn't know there was a cave in there, honestly, but apparently there must be one. So let's find it. You know, right now, I can. Oh, okay, there we go. Have we found it? There's a lot of, like, broken blocks down there, which is. Oh, there we go. Found him. So now, oh, and we got a carrot from that. That's wonderful. Okay, so let's just patch in the gap with some dirt. Make it so non-mobs can spawn here again. Put some torch down there. Block off this gap maybe. Just put a bunch of. There we go. That's good enough for me. And there we go. Everything is all wonderful. We can sleep, and the day is good. So I hope you did enjoy this video. We're all crazy, really. Gotta prove yourself some effort. And too many choices is a bad thing. But I think 3 to 6 is the perfect number of choices. I think if you want to give someone choices and you want it to be a positive thing, 3 to 6 is okay. Or just say anything, and they'll, like, make up their own 3 to 6. So maybe that's useful. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's like the reverse thing, where, like, you're wondering how many choices you should give yourself. Again, I think 3 to 6 is good. Or sometimes 2. 2 is the easiest way to make a decision, because you can instinctively know one or the other. You know how there's the, I said I was going to, but you know, right before we go, it's important. You know how there's that really common cliche of, like, oh yeah, if you're ever unsure what to do between, like, 2 decisions, let's say 2 girls, or, like, 2 cars, 2 jobs, 2 whatevers, you know, like, if you're ever torn between 2 things, what you have to do is you have to toss a coin, because before the coin lands, you'll know, like, for sure which side you want. Like, if you're curious as to whether you should go left or right in a forest, toss the coin. If, you know, make heads go left, make tails go right, and when the coin lands, you'll either be disappointed in the result, or you'll really like it, and then you'll know for sure which one you want. And even if you're not, then go random. There you go, 100% of the time you solve it. But yeah, it's really easy to make those decisions, because it's 2 things, and the more you add, the harder it gets. And 6, I think, I don't know where I've come up with that, but I think 6 is the number where it's just about too high. It's almost getting to the point where you won't make a decision, but it feels like a lot of choices. So there you go. There's some specific advice to add to the very non-specific advice, and I hope you all enjoyed the video. You can like it if you did like it, because it helps out the channel a lot. Let's know you do like Minecraft videos. I know they're not a very common thing on the internet, are they? You can share the video if you really liked it, and you can subscribe if you're new around here, because I make videos like this one every single day on my channel, and if you subscribe, you'll see them daily on your homepage. Thank you very much for watching. Oh, did I just finish this right now? Oh, I did. Wonderful. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.